Hey guys, Jessica Henry here. I wanted to welcome you to Renaissance Academy of Fine Arts. I am so thrilled to be with you today and to have you here with me. It is an honor and I just wanted to say thank you. Can't wait to get started on this. I just wanted to take a few moments here at the beginning just to welcome you to my studio. It's thundering outside today, so I find this very exciting. So here we go. Welcome to my studio. Welcome to Renaissance. Today, I have this warm, quiet, inviting atmosphere in here because we're getting into drawing. We're getting into our foundations, and that is essential to this entire thing we're building here. Getting the foundation of your education in place. So today we're going to start with just some very basic foundational principles and on which you will build, and we will refer to those throughout the entire year. I'm going to start out today with talking about materials and go over the materials that I suggested you get, and then talk about the materials for the remainder of the year. I don't want to get too much into the entire calendar year and everything here because we're going to get into all that. And you already know a little bit more about Renaissance Academy at this point here as we're moving forward. So I don't really want to get into the whole history of all that because we are going to jump into this and have a great lesson today. I think you're going to find this to be very exciting, and I hope that you enjoy it. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera around and just kind of give you a quick glimpse of my studio here. I'm going to talk about materials here as I turn the camera down. And so I won't be able to see very many of your comments. Oh, you know what? Before we get going, I wanted to address a little bit real quick about technical issues. With the Academy here, we are going to have to work really hard to be adaptable. There are all sorts of variables with technology, and as we've already found out, and that's what I said this morning in a post on our Facebook member page, is the only thing that we can really count on with technology is the only thing predictable is that it's unpredictable. So we are going to do everything we can to try to go live with the videos as much as possible. Sometimes glitches happen. I will just make a regular video and upload it to your member page. Also, with dates and times and so forth, we will try very hard to keep it Thursdays at 10. But sometimes medical situations or just basic life emergencies happen. You will get your video every week. And so in what form, we will have open communication and we will talk about it and just make sure everyone's on the same page. All right, so I just wanted to get that out of the way before we get going. All right, so now I'm really going to turn this camera down and I'm going to put it on the paper that I have here on my drafting table. I'm going down. Okay, so, and I know it's a little bit dark, but I had glare every which way but up on this this morning. So I have worked out the lighting so that you can still see what I'm doing without the glare on my paper. So here we go. Try this. That's going to be glare. Okay, so before we get into that, I wanted to talk about, I have the list of materials here. So let's talk real quick about the 31 weeks. As you know, we're getting started with drawing, and I've talked about the different pencils and things like that that we're going to need. I have the H, 4H, 3B, and what is this one? 4B. I just suggested 4B, 2B, HB, and 4H. Those are pretty good to have. You can have those in variations, but I do suggest, especially as we get into watercolors, more of the 4H and the harder pencils. And what that means is when you have a line of pencils, in the middle you have a pencil called HB. Oh, and we do have glare, don't we? Make it like this. Okay, in the middle you have HB. On this side, going this way, you have all the B pencils, like this. And the most I've seen is about a 9B. And that just means that the further down this chart you get, the softer the graphite. So the softer the graphite, the darker the line is that you make. And conversely, on this side, H is the harder the graphite, H. So the higher the number, the harder the graphite in the pencil, and so the lighter the line it makes. I prefer about a 4H for my watercolors. It's a very light line. It's very difficult to see, but and it also doesn't have all that loose graphite on the surface. So we're going to get into that. So make sure you have those. That's about all you need to know about that. And then so for erasers, I prefer the Prismacolor plastic eraser. These don't abrade the surface very much, and a kneaded eraser is fine. You can, twist it to a sharp little point and get in if you need to. Let's see, scissors. I use the artist tape, and you can see here on my paper, I've just cut a piece and I tape it down. Today I only have one piece on. If I was going to be taking a long time working on a drawing, I would tape all the way around the parameter, nice and neat and tidy, and then I would also tape a piece of tissue paper, just one piece of tape across here, so I could cover it and protect my drawing when I'm not working on it. So it's good to have just regular artist tape. It won't rip the surface of your paper too. Keep your scissors handy. So I've already talked about these. I'm going to put these aside. And then you'll also want to use a T-square today, and we're going to be talking about this later. And I have some scratch paper over here that I'll use later. You can use a caliper if you have these. I find that when I'm teaching, it's easier for you guys to see what I'm talking about with a piece of scratch paper. So I'm going to use a scratch paper. But calipers are just as handy, and I'll just demonstrate those. All right, now I have also talked about ways to sharpen your pencil. And I have a preference. If you are a younger student or somebody who feels not very comfortable with using an X-Acto knife, you can use just your standard pencil sharpener. And these are fine. The only reason I don't care for these is because when you have a normal point on your pencil, it dulls very quickly. And so you have to keep sharpening it, and which I find annoying to go back and do every now and then. So what I do, and this is what I learned at the ateliers, and I'm going to demonstrate how I sharpen a pencil right now. So let's move this out of the way. We'll get back to those materials in a minute. This is just a little teeny tiny X-Acto knife pen, and I hold my pen or pencil like this, and I just start chipping away at it. Just like this. And you want to be very careful. I've broken many leads doing this. But as you get down to I say lead, it's graphite. As you get down to the graphite, just press very, very lightly, just shaving the smallest little pieces, like this. And the reason I like doing my pencils this way is because it forces me to have a delicate hand when I'm drawing. And one of the great things about drawing is to make it look effortless. And you can do that by nobody seeing your eraser marks. So if you press lightly enough, you can erase so that no one sees your mistakes. All right, so getting rid of this wood, and I'm tapering it. I'm giving it a long taper up here. It just seems like it gives it more support than if you kind of beaver chew right here, and then you have all this lead. So I do a nice elongated wooden support. It's kind of more like a support. So getting all those little shavings out of here, like that. Okay, so here we go. Now, I might go with a little bit longer lead than that, but as you can see on some of these others, make sure to always put that away. On my 4H, I do have it fairly long. That's a couple inches or an inch and a half, whatever. All right, then you'll want these little sandpaper things. You can buy these at any art store. And then I hold my pencil like this, and I turn as I sharpen and turn. I'm going like this as I'm sharpening that. And that'll get my lead to a needlepoint sharpness. And you'll want a garbage can handy because you need to bang the graphite dust out in it. Okay, so here we go. That looks pretty good. You can see that. pretty sharp. All right, so I'm going to set that aside, get all my little wood shavings out of the way. All right, so that's it on pencils. What else have we got to say about materials? Artist tape, paper, just some nice heavier paper with a good tooth. I recommend the Canson paper. You can get Strathmore, you can get, I mean, really any kind. Especially for drawing, I find that it's helpful and useful just to have a bunch of paper on hand. Okay. And then later on in the drawing course, we're going to get more into working on colored paper and using highlighters and terracotta, highlighter white chalk pencils and terracotta colored pencils. We'll be using a plumb line, and we'll be using more of the T-square then. It is nice to, of course, have a drafting table. My drafting table might look a little bit different than yours because I keep black on the surface over here off to the side because there'd be glare on the glass. And then I also recommend a drawing board that you can tape your drawings and paper down to. And then you can pick this up and move it around as you need to. All right, so you might want a desk lamp. You would want much more lighting on your paper than I have here because you wouldn't be dealing with glare. I recommend this book if you don't have this one already. It's fabulous for art materials. It's really thick, very heavy, and it goes into all of the information you'd want about all art materials. All right, as we get further into the year, we'll talk more about all the different art supplies. You do not need to buy them all at the beginning. Some of you are only taking this drawing course, so I'm not going to go into this whole, all the other materials, but a lot of them you probably already have. We'll get into those later. Okay, so that is that, and so here is what you have this week in your members page about the drawing materials, and that's everything I just went over. Okay, so now I believe we are ready to jump into the worksheets. What I want to talk about here is I always tell people if you can write your name, you can draw. When you were learning to write letters, your teacher gave you paper that had the lines on it like this, right? Okay, so what they did is when your teacher gave you, for example, the letter R, your assignment was to put that right next to it. I know this sounds super basic, but just stick with me here. Your assignment was just simply to draw it right next to it. You had the top and bottom helper lines. All you had to do was assess that that's how long that line was. You were already given these marks. Your next job was to figure out how big that curve was. And so you were training your eye to get that curve exactly the way it should be. Then what is this angle? You had to conclude, well, that angle started here and it went down about yay far. And I make two little marks, just draw the line. Okay? Same with any letter, S, whatever. You had to learn how to use your eye to get those exact shapes, angles accurately. I know it sounds very basic, but this is the building blocks of classical drawing. All right? So I have given you some worksheets here today, and I wanted to talk about those and how we're going to work through these. I am going to use just, I think I grabbed a 3B pencil. Here, I'll just use the one we just sharpened. I think this is a 4B. I'm using this because it's going to be a little bit easier for you to see. What we're going to do with these in your worksheets that you have is we're going to just take this line and duplicate it right next to it. We're going to do that with these vertical ones and these horizontal ones. We're going to do that by using the 4 main tools that we've talked about. The 4 main tools that we're going to be addressing in this lesson today and throughout all of our years of the Renaissance Academy of Fine Arts is, first of all, we're going to use the plumb lines. We're going to use horizontal helper lines. We're going to use measuring and negative space. So I'm going to take each one of those and break them apart right here. So right here now we're going to talk about measuring. Okay? So this first line, number 1, we have a number 1 right next to it. We're going to take this and I'm going to start out with a dot that marks the beginning of my line. I'm not sure if you can see that, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. You don't have to make them that big. Now I need to figure out by using my eye how far over this other end is. Okay? I'm going to use my eye and guess it's about there, and then just connect the dots. Okay, so that's the lesson for number 1. Number 2, how far over is this one? Give us our first dot in the beginning. And I'm going to say it's about there. You're training your eye to see distances accurately. We're going to measure and check these here in just a minute. Okay, number 3. About that far. I'll try that. Okay, they don't have to be perfectly straight. I'm just kind of trying to get the idea there. Number 4. There's my first dot. And these are kind of, I've always compared doing these simple exercises with practicing the scales on a piano. The more you practice these, the better you'll get at doing your scales. So I'm taking a piece of scratch paper here, just white paper, and what I'm going to do to check my work is this. I'm going to make these marks on here really big so you can see them. This is my original reference. That's how wide my original reference is. I'm going to check it with what I did. Okay, so my first one, I'm going to give myself a star. I got it. Okay, second one. Find a clean spot on your edge of your paper. 1, 2. All right, let's check that. Okay, got that one too. Yoo-hoo, I'm on a roll. Okay, let's check number 3. I'm going to just use one of those lines I already had. And got that. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, let me just turn my paper over and check number 4. 4 is the long one. The longer you get, the more difficult it gets because it's just more to try to take in. Oh, I was way off. Look, I'm like half an inch off. Okay, so you can check that. And then number 5, let's get this little one in here. Yeah, the little ones are much easier. I get a star for that one. Okay, now, without turning your paper sideways, we're going to do these vertical ones. It's important to learn how to get these from every direction. So, let's get these vertical ones over here. Number 1, start with your dot. How far down is that? I'm flicking my eye back and forth here too. I think that I should have started it a little bit higher. All right, number 2. There. Just draw the line down. Next one, number 3. It's a little bit shorter. And number 4. Okay, so let's check those. You can even use a T-square to check it if you want to also. Okay, original line, number 1. Okay, see, I needed to make it up a little bit bigger. That looks good. Number 2, let's use that marker line and this one. And, okay, well, I made mine a teeny bit too long. Should have been shorter. Number 3, let's just use this marker line, and we'll get the top one in there. That's pretty close. Maybe a teeny bit longer, but it's close. Number 4. Oh, I should have made that a little longer. Okay, so that's the first page, first lesson. Just set those aside. You have these in your file, so if you want to print out more, you can do that too. Okay, so now we're going to talk about angles. And these are the same kind of thing that we're going to do. You have this first line to work out right here. Didn't know you were going to be doing math. Let's get this first one in here. Trying to get that exact length. Now, you just look and see how far open that angle is. And I'm going to make that mark right there. and try to put that same distance line right there. It's not necessary that you use a straight edge for this. So we're going to come back and check these in a few minutes. This length. And that is not open very wide, so we'll just go with that. Okay, we've got an obtuse angle over here. And flick your eye back and forth to try to get that exact angle. This right here. Okay, and get that length in there. I think that should be longer. But how high is that? Okay, so let's check the work. I'm running out of clean edges here. You can always fold your scratch paper. Check that one. Okay, doing good. And then that's how far open the angle is. Okay, so I think I got it. All right, I'm gonna give myself a star. Okay, this one. Okay, I could have made that line a little bit longer. And then with that. All right, so I'm not going to check this entire page, but you get the idea. So that's how you check those. These are very important to get the angles, trying to get those accurately. Now, I have drawn on this page just some random shapes because they're very much the way letters are for us when we're learning to write letters. We have the top and bottom helper lines, and then I've given us a blue line in the middle to sort of suggest that dotted line. But what it is doing is it's taking this random abstract shape and it's breaking it in half and making it simpler. We're already given how tall this shape is, and we're given a horizontal helper line. Okay, so I'm going to take this shape and draw it right next to it, and I'm going to start at the top of this line right here and coming over. I hope that you can see that. Straight down, looking to see where it connects with the blue line. I'm looking at this angle right here. I think I had made mine too strong. Now I'm looking at this angle. Look, I have a reverse angle like what we were just working on right here. So we'll get that in place. And then I have another angle right here. See this angle? So let's get that in place. That goes just about up to this blue line and comes back around. Now I have another angle. That's right here. And then I've got this in-cut shape here. So you can come back through here and check all your measurements and all that if you need to. But that's how that works. Okay, so same thing with this one. I'll do one more and then I'll let you guys work on these down here. So this comes up. And then we've got a distance here, just like we were doing on the first worksheet. Check that distance. And up here we've got a straight edge. Check that. Goes straight up now. And then we've got this curve here. Looks like I run out of line here. Let's give ourselves a little bit more line. All right. This curves over. We've got a slight angle here coming down this way. Comes in and down. Okay, Now I need to figure out how far over the bottom of this line is. It's about 1/2 inch or so. And so this curve just connects down to there, like that. Okay, so then you can do those two. Okay. Now we're going to get into a little bit more, I want to talk about negative shapes and negative space. Some people call it the space that's left behind or whatever. What it is everything that is behind the positive shape. Okay? This lesson, when I first really understood about negative space, everything changed for me. Like the veils were lifted off my eyes and I realized there isn't anything I can't draw, because really all you're looking at is just abstract shapes in the positive image. So all of this behind here is all negative shape. No longer is it a complicated hand, but it's just a series of positive shape with negative shapes behind it. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about this in the years at the Academy here. So for the first shape, I've given us a box, same size, and we're going to talk about drawing just all this background space and not worry about this blue space, if that makes sense. All right, so let's get going here. And we're going to do these both together. So I'm looking at where these intersect with the box. You won't always have a box around things, but you can sort of visualize a box as you are working through other stuff that you're working on. Portraits and, recognizable things like trees and stuff. All of which we will get into. I am so excited for this year and all the different things that we're going to talk about. And some people were asking about why we did the calendar year this way, because this way it enables us to get out and do some planaring and in the nice warm summer months. So we're going to take advantage of all that. So I am just drawing this triangular shape here, and I just drew this shape in here, which I think I made it too big. Okay, and you can use your 4B pencil or just something dark. It doesn't matter at this point what you're using, but we will on our last page. We have a couple more pages to do. That one will matter what color pencil or what value pencils you're using. So we'll get into all that there. So I'm looking at all of this really cool shape. You can break down your background spaces too. Like I put this line here, so we're just going to draw this shape right in here. All right. So that goes like this. Anything you have to do to simplify your world, feel free to do it. Okay, that like that. Now we've got this boot in here, so we're going to come down. That rain sounds so relaxing and peaceful. We have these magnificent thunderstorms rolling in for today, and all right, so I just drew this boot in here. It helps too sometimes if you can look at these background shapes and come up with what it reminds you of. Let's get all this little piece down here. That comes up just barely, and down, and straight across. Looking at this negative space over here, we've got about that much shape. Comes up and over. All right, now just like that, we've drawn this positive shape by only drawing the negative shape. All of this back in here. Okay, so that is how you're going to work out things that might be complicated and challenging. Let's do this one down here. So I want to start with this whole half moon over here, because to me that seems like the easiest, biggest shape. So we're going to start, it kind of starts way over here, but it's just slivers along the edge. And I'm looking at how much space there is in here. And again, you can use your measuring to figure out how far over this negative spaces from the edge. With my years at the atelier and the classical academy, and then combining that with having to communicate this methodology to children, I have broken down the more complicated classical approaches to a very, very simplistic, understandable means of these ideas. And you'll see how this unfolds throughout our training here, how all of these really simple rudimentary ideas play into a more complicated subject, such as portraits and figure work and all of that. So I'm going to break down this background here. Let's just draw that line over there. We're going to make this simpler. I think that that piece echoes that piece. And you can really take as much time on this as you want. You can get as complicated and in-depth and measure and all that. But at the same time, I don't want you to get too obsessive about it. Just go on to the next one. You can practice these at your home. You can just draw a random shape and give yourself a box if you want it, or not. And then just come up with your own little exercises. That is what I hope that you guys do, and I hope that if you do, you share on the Facebook page experiences you had and what you thought of this lesson, and that we have great camaraderie in talking about it, and everybody shares their ideas. Because I think we've got a great group here, and I'm very excited to hear what you guys come up with. Okay, so I'm looking at this beautiful little wave piece right in here. Kind of an elegant little thing. It comes up. It looks like there's a truck or a van right there. I don't think I gave myself enough space there. Let's move this over. It's more like a moving van than a regular van. All right, now so we have this piece of white on the inside here. Let's get that. And I like a window in my negative spaces sometimes just as for an exercise, because it helps you to think that way too. Sometimes you're drawing something and you've got this little gap in the middle. And so we're going to train our eye to see that too. And I'm flicking my eye back and forth here and see what we have. Okay, so there we go. Next, now we have some recognizable shapes. And I thought that this would be kind of fun to do with giving a little bit different shapes with the circle and more of a box shape here. I'm going to just sharpen this real quick because it's getting kind of dull. Okay, now, horse head. We have this circle. Let's break this down into something simple. So I'm going to just break this circle up here and figure that that starts about there. Just drawing this negative space back in here. Flicking my eye to this angle. Remember when we talked about angles? There's that. So this angle comes down. And I'm going to forget about that right now because the angle goes pretty much all the way to the top. Like that. Okay. And then we've got another angle here that represents under the jaw. So I'm looking at where this line just intersected the circle, coming over here. I really want you all to feel very comfortable to ask questions and you know, express any thoughts or questions, comments, whatever, because we are all in this journey together, and like I've mentioned a few times, you never know who might be wondering the exact same thing, and it's impossible for me to know, and if you're thinking or wondering something unless you say something, so please talk to me. So I'm drawing this negative shape back here between the ears and where that comes into play. Now I'm going to look at this whole piece of this negative shape as we have it here before us. It looks kind of like one of those Grecian vases, you know, those black and orange vases. We'll come back through here now with a little bit more of the finesse of these lines, make those a little prettier. Okay, so right in here we have this, looks like a tornado shape. Okay, so there's that. Let's get that piece of white sliver in there. Okay, moving along. All right, in the back of this ear, see where it touches this? It cuts that plumb line, or that angle line in half. So there's this little gap here. And then down here we can just, we've already got this angle, so let's just get some of these little subtle curves in here where they live. Okay, now you can always come back through here and darken your silhouette if you should choose. But that's really not necessary, because I think you get the idea of the negative space there. So in so doing, we took a more complicated subject. By drawing the background, we came up with the foreground. Same thing with this bird statue, this raven. We'll get this in place here. I'm looking to see where it intersects the rectangle. We've got this great little negative space back in here. Not thinking about it as a bird. Look at this nice, strong, simple angle. Let's get that in place where it hits the outside of my box. And then all I have to do is look at the subtle changes in that line. It's not very many. That. And then I'm going to draw this. It's almost like the state of Minnesota or something like that. So I'll draw that in here. And we've got a strong angle right here. Let's get that in place. Like that. Okay, so you can come back through and adjust your drawing and kind of make that look a little bit more like the actual drawing once you get it in place. Again, these are just tools to help you have just a better scope of getting some more abstract qualities to figuring this out along the way. Okay, so there's that one. Now, this one, I took a photo and I broke it down into really simple black and white abstract form. What we're going to do is you can draw this right next to it, or you can draw it on a piece of paper. I think I might just want to do this on this piece of paper because I like this, and I think it'd be more interesting just right on this nice quality piece of paper. So, my T-square, is that what just fell? All right, well, we don't need a T-square. I was going to, well, here, I can go like this. So there's the top of my box. Oops. And here's the bottom of my box. And then we're going to make this, we're going to just give it a straight edge over here. And then we're going to figure out how wide this box is. Oh, hear that thunder? Sounds wonderful. So there's how wide my box is. Coming over here. Let's do it again down here so my lines don't get wonky. Okay, we are all set. So I'm going to put my drawing right next to this and use this for reference. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw this whole negative space back in here. And I'm going to do that by looking at where, let's draw these lines. I know it's going to be a little bit hard to see on here, but I'm just going to cut my squares like that. And so I've got his ears kind of come like this, and then I'm drawing this negative space back in here. Just looking at the white, or I mean the black surrounding the white. Not worrying about the fact that it's a horse or anything else of that nature. Let's give this a little bit. If you see, I'm trying to keep my pencil very, very angular, very straight edges, like that. I'm looking at this strong angle in here. Again, we have this value piece in here that is creating, his lower face was in shadow, so the shadow piece of his face is kind of absorbed into the background. But we'll come back through there with other values, the pencils. Keeping it very, very simple. Just drawing this shape in here. You can cut that in half there too and see where that falls in place with his knee. And like that. Okay, so what I've drawn here is all of this dark negative space in the background here. And that will make more sense as I start to get in some of these very simple pattern pieces inside the image in the contours, like that. We've got a lighter piece of value right here. And that is just a window like we did on the negative studying. And then we'll draw this piece of value on his neck. Got a darker piece for his eye. And just slip in the bridle here real quick. so let's start mapping in. I'm just going to take my pencil here, this is the 4B still, and I'm going to do some shading lines to help us identify where the background is in relation to the darker value in relation to the lighter values. So we can kind of see these cookie cutter shapes here as we're dealing with them. And so I hope that you see too how we went from just very simple working on copying lines to actually securing a beautiful drawing. I'm sure that you will take much more time on this than I am. But the idea is there, and the principles are there, that with studying negative shapes, plumb lines, which break a thing in half, these are plumb lines, helper lines, horizontal lines, those you can draw across. We're going to get into a lot more of those things next week in the class too. In fact, every week. But practice, practice. I say all the time, perfect practice makes perfect. It's possible to practice all your life at something inaccurately. One thing I said in the worksheet, before we even got started, was that one thing you will never see me teach is just loose gestural type drawings, because I feel that it's important for people to learn to just be very slower and methodical and careful and cautious every step of the way. I understand gestural drawings and I get the purpose, and we may talk about those at some point, but I think that what happens is if you spend the first few minutes in your drawing class just trying to loosely sketch in something and hope that one of your lines hits its target, you're going to end up spending a lot more time reworking your mistakes. And I think it's better for the student and anyone to just have a little bit more care and concern for draftsmanship and save you the time than to be devoting it all to erasing, like I'm doing right now. So, anyway. So next week, I do have some really great, I have a beautiful lesson planned to do that owl. If you've been following me on social media, I was talking about this owl that I drew, and we're going to use that. I'm going to use that owl to teach a method called sight size. And that is very similar to what we're doing here. We're making this the same size. But in this case, we're really only referring to negative space in this technique. Next week, we're going to be utilizing plumb lines, horizontal helper lines, measuring, as well as negative space by doing that one owl. And so that will be a very exciting lesson, and we will refer to that throughout the years as well. So I'm just going to let all of this kind of shade down into here, into the dark passage. All right. Getting in, I'm going to just take now, we're going to take our 4H, very light. I'm going to map in some of these lighter valued pieces in here. And now I'm not so much preoccupied with the negative space because I feel that the white passage in here is in place. So now I'm going to work on the interior pieces that I know are obviously equine anatomy and get those in. I didn't make the background as dark as I should have, but you can make this as dark as you see it in your printout here of your picture. And then when you go to do your middle tones, it'll look more sculptural. This will look really great if you have your lighter pencil revealing these lighter pieces and your darker pencils doing the darker background. So just like that. All right, I think that that's satisfactory for down there. And of course I am just hurrying because this is just, it's the demo. And I can't wait to see what you guys do. And I hope that you post these on our Facebook page so we can enjoy looking at everybody's work. If you'd like, no pressure, you don't have to. Had to have an eye. So I'll map in some of these pieces of value here because he's so pretty. Get the face in place. And the muzzle. Well, now he's really starting to look like an actual horse. This was actually my horse, and I was going over a jump with him at this moment. We were jumping. Okay, so I just corrected some of those little fine-tuned shapes in there. And you don't have to take this to a high polish or anything. I just think that as long as you start understanding that idea, then you will have a firmer grasp of where we're going with these concepts and principles. So I am going to loosen my camera up and bring you up a little bit closer. And kind of wrap up this lesson. Let's turn you around like this. So, all right. Well, hey guys, this was our first lesson and I hope that you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun going through this and planning and preparing this for you. I am already working on next week's lesson and writing up everything you need to know about sight size and how it applies to our classical foundation of drawing. And again, just securing this foundation is critical. Too many people, I feel, want to just jump into painting because it's fun and we love that feel of the paint coming off the brush, and we're going to get into all that, but it's imperative that to have paintings and artwork that has that solid knowledge of understanding of anatomy and what it is you're looking at, how to draw things. You will find that by taking the time and just backstepping a little bit and just looking into these very foundational elements, that you will actually you'll see your paintings improve because you'll have a greater understanding of those elements. So do these, practice them, enjoy this, and stay tuned. And I think we're going to have a great year. Thank you guys so much again for joining, and I'm just so excited. All right, thank you guys. Bye-bye.